Alright. Another episode. I guess this one's a new one. Movie recap. I'm going to talk about Star Trek Beyond. I don't want to hold it. The short answer, it's just an okay action flick. Paramount is just about trying to make money, and this movie franchise is turned into how do we make money, as opposed to what is Roddenberry's vision of what Star Trek is. And that vision is what made Star Trek great, and this movie doesn't capture that stuff. I'm not going to hold that. This movie is pretty much about a petty squabble or petty difference. It's not anything of significance. Star Trek, to me, and what I think Roddenberry's vision is about looking past those petty squabbles and those petty differences, or taking a step back and thinking about the situation that they find themselves in instead of just knee-jerk reaction to stuff. This movie is really a childish issue, but that's what makes a good action flick or an okay action flick. So that's pretty much the sum. I'm gonna go rant for a while now. I hope you stay tuned in, but first the movie. So let's just talk about aspects of the movie. It starts out with a really useless scene. Like, it's totally pointless, totally meaningless. I need some light over here. Basically some kind of roly-poly type species where Kirk is trying to talk to them, and then they just outright attack him. Just start attacking him. It's like, what the hell is going on? That scene, to me, is truly just for entertainment purposes. It's trying to get around that hurdle that a lot of content has, which is, oh, it starts out boring. Oh, why is it boring? And so they're trying to make it exciting and catchy right at the beginning, but it has no point, so what's the point of it? It's completely a throwaway scene. Well, except for the fact that they're trying to introduce this piece of a weapon, and it's so not important, it's important. Anyway, the next scene, Kirk's on the space station, and some girl is begging him to go investigate some trouble her family is having in some random sector. I didn't get it. It's like, did he have a fling with this chick at some random bar, and now she's begging him to help him out? I don't really get it. This situation just needs, just send a runabout. Just go investigate the situation and see what happens. As it escalates, or they could have just said it escalated. We sent some ships, we tried to do some investigations, but they've been attacked and we don't know what's going on, and they might have said that, but it was really muddled between the fact cinematically they were trying to have her speak in a foreign language and translating it into English, and it's like I can't hear half of what she's saying. It's like noise. It's like, come on. I understand what they were trying to do, but it was a fail. That was a fail. That was a complete fail. It was very distracting. It was very annoying, and I couldn't really pay attention to what was being said. But anyway, we're going to send the lead captain in the Federation Starfleet off to go investigate this random girl's problem. It would have been better if they if they, if it was them out venturing in the empties of space, and some girl comes up on, or just some random person, doesn't have to be a girl, but some random person pops up on a communications transmission, and I need help, and I'm in distress, and Kirk is like, oh, well, we're the only ones out here, and it'll take days for anybody else to get here, so let's go help them out, as opposed to, I'm specifically begging for Kirk to help me, and I'm at this space station, and I'm not really in trouble, and you need to go investigate it, Kirk, because we had a one-night stand and you owe me. I don't know, that's the impression I got from that. It was very retarded. So anyway, he decides to go off and investigate this issue, and lo and behold, it's a trap. How obvious was that? The biggest thing that annoyed me, they tried to scan it, and they tried to, hail, but it kept advancing, and then it turned into a bunch of little things, and then it was like, okay, they're attacking us. And the moment that one of those ships went straight through the Enterprise, I was like, where's the force fields? Do we not have force fields in this show? Did we lose technology somewhere along the line? It's like, we got a force field. A ship is not going to penetrate a force field. So that was kind of like, okay, whatever happened to that? I don't know. And then, so they get taken down pretty quickly. I don't know. There's just so much that they missed out on that wouldn't have led up to this situation. You send a scouting ship to figure out what's going on. You try to understand the situation. You try to determine what's really, long-range scans, evasive tactics. They did nothing. They just like, oh, they're killing us, and that was the response. It wasn't, a smart captain. It was a dumb captain. Oh my God, we're being attacked. What are we gonna do? And then, in lieu of that, he reactively says, everybody abandon ship, and what happens? They all get killed. It's like, you could have transported them down, you could have done some evasive maneuvers, you could have shot a hole through the enemy ships and tried to, haul ass down to the planet. There's just so many thoughts that go through your head that it's like, a seasoned captain would know these things. And it's like, no, I just destroyed my ship because I don't know what I'm doing. Lost more than half my crew because I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like, alright, whatever. So anyway, the other issue is, that we're in this situation. And this is something I want to talk about in the Batman vs. Superman movie, but we'll talk about it here. There's no precursor to this situation. There was a little bit of setup, the girl panicking, throwing a fit, but, at this point, I'm not invested. I'm not really. It's just kind of like a roller coaster ride. Woo! Okay, we're done. Woo! Okay, we're done. As opposed to, getting you invested in this situation. What's going on? Why do we care? What's the mystery that's happening? What's where's the depth of the story? And there just isn't any. And like I said, a lot of movies are having this concept of a very shallow interaction, but a lot of action sequences, and it's not getting you invested in the movie. I mean, even full action movies can get you invested in the story if they tell it right. And this movie is definitely lacking in that department. So anyway, they crash on the planet, losing more than half their crew. There's a battle sequence with the bad guy trying to get the part, and then it's all just empty. And there's a reason I'm just kind of glossing over this stuff. It's because it's just empty. There's no meaning to it. It's like, oh, okay, he fought for the part. All right. And then another thing I want to touch on is Bones and Spock. Their banter. It's very stunted. It's very... I mean, I watched it in the theater and people laughed at those moments, and I was just kind of like, okay. They paused when they were trying to set up the joke, and it was like, it just didn't flow. It didn't feel natural. It was very awkward joking. It felt very canned between those two. These two actors don't really have a chemistry, and so I think that's part of the problem of why the jokes are flat. Also, the original Star Trek, the dynamic between Spock and Bones was there to highlight the emotional response to a situation, and Spock was there to highlight the logical response to the situation. And as with normal people, the logical response is kind of like, don't care, I'm gonna make fun of you. and that's what Bones started to do. Bones like, oh, you and your logic, blah. It wasn't just random canned jokes. It was to show the juxtaposition of those two ways of thought. And then Bones, the actor, started throwing in his own commentary because he thought it was funny. And it was funny. And it's totally lost in this movie. Anyway, they introduced a new alien girl. She's kind of interesting, I guess. Her accent is, I don't know if it's a real accent. I don't think it is. I think it's kind of an acted accent to try and make her sound like a kid, but it is really bad. It's distracting. It's like, okay, whatever. It was distracting. But anyway, and then of course she's like the IT person with some fighting skills. It's like everybody needs an IT guy these days. When Spock is supposed to be the IT guy. I mean, honestly, so Spock is supposed to be the IT guy. That's who Spock is. He's the science. And I don't know who the warrior is on the crew in the original series. I mean, it's obvious in the other series, but in the original series, I'm not sure who would be the warrior. I guess Kirk would be the warrior. So, anyway, so she gets into a banter with Scotty, and that becomes kind of rude. It was kind of weird. I was like, why are we making rude comments about each other? Like, alright, whatever. So they spend some time devising a plot to go free the crew, and they don't really say anything because you can't reveal the surprise of what we're actually doing. Otherwise it's boring. It's like, whatever, okay. But when we find out what their plan is, lo and behold, it's just a full frontal attack to the base. And it's like, seriously, three people are going to full frontal assault this base of hundreds, if not thousands, of enemy soldiers, not like just civilians. These are full-on combatant people. I mean, they're running ships through other ships. That's their strategy. It's like that is. But okay, sure, they have a fight, they win, sort of. Oh, and before that, though, the bad guy convinces Crabhead Girl to turn over the part by going, I'm going to hurt one of your friends. And all they had to do was say, well, it's still back at the ship. I don't know, go look for it. You know. But no, it has to be this. We're going to peer pressure you for 5 seconds, and you're going to turn over the part because you're a pansy. Starfleet people are not pansies. There are 4 lights. Anyway. Star Trek people are not pansies. And they're playing them off as pansies. And it's annoying. So anyway, they fight for a while, and they somehow free the crew, and meanwhile the enemy is taking off in ships, and it's like, okay, whatever. And then they eventually fly their ship and take one of their ships and go after them. And while they're going after them, they reveal the deep-seated secret that it's not an alien, it's just some retarded Starfleet captain throwing a bitch fit. And it's like, what? What? We created this whole alien race, their own style of fighting, their own look and feel, and it turns out to be just a human Starfleet captain throwing a bitch fit? Really? Really? That was a throw. That ended the movie for me. I was just like done at that point. I was like, what? Okay. It's like, so the other issue, I mean, it's a Starfleet captain. Like I just said, Starfleet officers are not pansies. You know, this guy got marooned on a planet, and he might have been more mature, he might have gone crazy, but this is a petty issue. You know, it's a petty squabble. It goes back to that pettiness, the petty, what Star Trek is not, and they highlighted it full center. Like, this is how crappy this movie is, right here. And it, you know, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, went, you know, Cisco and Kira and Dax, and I don't remember, the Doctor might have. You know, they went back in time, and they went back to that revolutionary period where society, Earth society, was trying to overcome all these weaknesses, all these things that bring down society, and they overcame that through this revolution, portrayed in that episode in Deep Space Nine. You know, it gave birth to the Federation. It created the Federation, its morals, its philosophies, its center. And to say that somebody, some random guy is going to throw a bitch fit about how the Federation is, it's just kind of like, really? I mean, it's like that guy wouldn't exist in that society, you know? I mean, Paris is the one that keeps coming to mind. You know, he was a delinquent, and he broke the law, and, you know, he was still more mature than this guy, this bad guy character in Star Trek Beyond. But anyway, like I said, it's petty, and it's just like, all right, whatever. There isn't much after that. They crash into the starbase and eventually kill the bad guy, and that's pretty much the end. I mean, there isn't much there. There isn't much depth. There isn't much conversation to have about this movie, other than it's It's just an action flick. I mean, I watch a lot of action flicks, and it's not bad. It's not a bad action flick, but it's not Star Trek. And so that's what I'm going to get into next. But I do want to mention one more thing before I get into the rant about Star Trek, which pretty much this whole thing is a rant about Star Trek. But the news and people were overly talking about the whole Sulu is gay thing. There is one camera shot of this gay situation, and I didn't even notice it in the movie. After watching the movie, then people talking about it, I was like, oh, I remember the scene, but I don't remember any gay activities going on in that scene. Yeah, it's like you guys way overplayed that situation. It's like, who cares? it's like what, whatever. Anyway, so on to the rant about what Star Trek is. Star Trek is about putting people of the show into a situation, not a fight, not some dumb argument with some other person, but a constructive conversation about a meaningful situation. I'll get into examples a little later, but the other thing, the crew has to think through this situation to find a better solution and resolve that situation. So it's not just, I'm going to go guns a-blazing, I'm just going to rush in and hope for the best. It's take a step back, think through the situation, find the best solution to the problem, and not just wing it. That's what Star Trek is about. Your greatest weapon is your mind, not anything else. Your mind is that weapon. And that's what Star Trek is. Star Trek, the weapon of choice is the mind. And overcoming one's emotional reaction to a situation to come up with a better option for all, not just you, but for all, that's what Star Trek's about. I just started watching the cartoon, the original series cartoon. I actually never seen it before. Well, I think I watched it when I was a kid, but I don't remember it well enough to say that I've watched it. But season 1, episode 7, The Infinite Vulcan, does a very good job at explaining what Star Trek is, what Star Trek's all about. There's of course Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot episode to The Next Generation. Very good episode. A lot of people like to quote Darmok and Jalad, which I don't understand. I mean, it is a great episode, don't get me wrong. Darmok is a very good episode, but people quote it like it's candy, and I don't understand it. I don't understand that the mainstream, that Paramount is saying that we need to give them action, and we need to be an action flick, and we need to be more like Star Wars, and yet the Star Trek people that like Star Trek, quote Darmok, and it's kind of like Darmok is not Star Trek or Star Wars. Darmok is not an action flick. Yes, there's some fighting, there's some battling, but it's a very mild fight scene. I mean, there's like 2, maybe 3 fight scenes in the whole episode. It's a lot of sitting around and talking to each other. It's a lot of getting to know each other. I mean, Darmok is a really good example of what Star Trek is. It's thinking through the situation. Hey, we have this conflict, and that conflict is our inability to communicate with each other. But instead of making it worse, let's work together on a problem, i.e. this beast. Let's work together on this problem so we can better understand each other, so we can better learn to communicate. That's what Star Trek is. So The other issue I have is when writers or actors make the comment that our current culture doesn't like something along those lines. And I'm just like, I shake my head. I'm like, if you can't create a story within this concept or this vision of the source material, then choose a different source material. I mean, if this movie was called something else, like Idiots in Space or Fast and Furious in Space, as a lot of people like to call it, because it's the same guy that made Tokyo Drift, I think it was, then call it something else. I mean, if you say it's something, it has to embody that something. It has to represent that source material. Changing the source material for your needs, I don't think is a good thing. I don't think it's appropriate or respectful for the person that originally created this content. It's okay for this to be a niche product. Not everybody has to like Star Trek. I honestly don't think a lot of people do like Star Trek. I think the vast majority don't like Star Trek because it is a thoughtful video. It is a thoughtful story. It is, it's about, rising above your emotions, and people don't want to see that on a daily basis. People just want to veg out and be entertained. And I get that because I do a lot of vegging out and entertained. But I also want material that has these deep thoughts. I want both. I don't want just Star Wars or Transformers or Michael Bay movies. I don't want that all the time. I want this other material. And Star Trek is that other material. And most of sci-fi is a niche product. I mean, just look at the Sci-Fi Channel. They do turn out some good movies from now and again. I think I just watched ARQ, and that was a pretty good movie. Even though I think that was Netflix that made it, not Sci-Fi Channel, but it's still sci-fi, and it's definitely a niche product. But most sci-fi, I would say that Star Trek is the embodiment of what sci-fi is. It is about exploring this thought. Minority Report, for some reason, comes to mind. Minority Report is about, well, what if we had people that could predict murder? What would our society be like? What would policing be like? What would lawyering be like? How would we do we imprison these people? Should we imprison these people? That is the crux of what sci-fi is having this situation and exploring it and seeing how it would play out. And that's what Star Trek did. Star Trek over and over again said, here's a scenario. How will it play out in this society of Star Trek? And what Star Trek aimed to do, at least what I believe Roddenberry's true vision was, to say that our society can be a better society if we look at it differently. And that's what Star Trek tries to convey. The other issue I have is people that claim that Star Trek is about action, that the original series is about action. I don't see it. I mean, I've been trying to pay attention. I mean, I'm like I said, I was just watching the original series' cartoon, and I'm not seeing it. Everything I'm seeing, yes, there's some action occasionally, there's some fight scenes occasionally, but everything I'm seeing is, well, wait a minute, Captain, let's think about this. These people are indigenous people. They're friendly, and we are encroaching upon them. It's not just, we're fighting. Well, why are we fighting? We just got here, we're fighting. Why? But why are we fighting? I don't know why we're fighting. We're just fighting. Okay, I guess we're fighting. You know, I mean, I'm not ranting about the last Abrams Into Darkness movie, but I mean, that one was a bad movie. So that one's really bad. Let's try and wrap this up. I'm getting close. I think I pretty much talked about most of this. So the parting thought is, if you have a Monet, if you have a work of Michelangelo, if you have Mozart or Beethoven, and you turn it into your own thing, and it doesn't really represent what the original artist had, do you claim it as the original artist? Do you say this is a better version of this guy's work of art? Or do you label it something else and claim it as your own? And that's kind of the idea that I have with this, that, you know, if you're going to make a Star Trek movie, you need to at least try. I mean, I don't think they're even trying. I mean, the Abrams movies were clearly an attempt at getting the Star Wars director, which he did, and I'm going to make a video about that soon. But about the Star Wars Force Awakens, not specifically him torturing Star Trek to get the job, but you know, those are throwaway movies in my mind now that that is completely clear to me that that's what he was doing. I mean, it's like, okay, whatever. But the second one, the first one was kind of an okay movie, and it was like, okay, maybe this is going in a good direction. But the second one was completely nosedive. The second one was like, wow, he failed miserably. I mean, that was, to me, was worse than Star Trek Nemesis, which was the worst movie, and now Star Trek Into Darkness is the worst Star Trek movie. It's like, you just took number one. But anyway, let me get back. Let me try to wrap this up, I guess. Star Trek is about taking a step back and thinking through the situation. Being more thoughtful about what's going on and not just reacting. That's what Star Trek is. And I don't feel that the Abrams-verse movies are capturing that. So anyway, I hope you watched this far into the video. That'd be cool if you did. If you did, and you liked it or didn't like it, or have some thoughts, please share below in the section, whatever. That'd be cool. Until next time, I guess. Later.